Hello, and welcome into Full Screen Podcast. I'm your host, Kira Aster, and joining me today, as always, fresh off of partying with Graydon Carter and the Zaz, the Big Z, in a matching summery blue tan number, is my co-host, Raven Ebert. How are we, Raven?
I'm good. It's summer, and I know that because the Cannes Film Festival is in full swing. The sweeping red carpet gowns, the increased carbon footprint of a lot of celebrities, the eventual heat death of our planet. You know, just lots of things to look forward to.
Normal things. How was the party in Antibes with the Big Z and Graydon?
I did not get the tan suit memo, so I just showed up dressed like a normal person. And I got dressed down by all the executives because I showed up looking like I wanted writers to get paid, and that was so gauche. And
well, there's your mistake. Yeah.
Very 2008 and 2000 and late. So
wonderful. Sounds like you had a great time. So for those who don't know what we're talking about, there is an article. We'll probably link it in our description. What do you think, Raven? I think this is a good read. It is. Yeah, it's from the New York Magazine. The reporter, I believe his name was Sean McCreesh. He attended this huge party that was thrown in a beautiful hotel, seaside hotel in Cannes, hosted by Graydon Carter and David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. The number one villain.
The
right
Joker now, and the Penguin of the entertainment industry right now, let's be honest.
Is very much society, like, let me establish myself as this Hollywood big player, Hollywood CEO, in the middle of a writer's strike where 2 days ago I was booed at Boston University during a commencement speech. I'm the number one villain in this WGA strike going on right now. But no, I'm gonna do a wasteful, glamorous, weird party. And this article is a good read because at some point, Sean McCreesh, the journalist, has this like, oh my god, this was like the most, you know, like people wanted to get on the guest list and all of that, like, and people were wondering, is Leo gonna be there? Is Lily Rose Depp gonna be there? I'm like, that sentence doesn't, like, I don't compute. Why Leo and why Lily in the same sentence? I mean, also, is she under 25? If so, then that makes sense.
I believe she is under 25. She's also the star of The Idol with The Weeknd, the Sam Levinson money laundering scheme, I want to call it, because I don't really think it's an artistic endeavor. And Cannes is a film festival that somehow manages to combine the kitschy glamour of us trying to stalk celebrities and look at their beautiful gowns, lots of beautiful gowns. And it has that component, but it is also at the same time, guys, if we don't know, a pretty prestigious film festival whose winners of the jury prizes have gone on to establish a lot of respect in the industry with regards to being performers, actors, writers, directors. This is, for example, where Quentin Tarantino got a lot of recognition for Pulp Fiction a long time ago. So it's not as if to say that they're necessarily following the same rules as the Oscar for Oscar bait. So I find it particularly galling that David Zaslav wants to make his money off of cheap reality TV, but at the same time come to soak up the champagne and sun at the southern French seaside because he loves movie festivals. Like, get fucked, bro. You don't want to pay for movies. You don't want to pay for people who write interesting movies. And I just want to say, if you want to look at true villainy, if you're able to get booed at by hundreds and thousands of New Englanders and still come out totally unfazed, you don't have blood in your veins. It is just cold steel within you. Like you have a Terminator mainframe within you. And we all love New England for being a little fiery, a little zesty.
Yeah.
They get their donkeys and they throw the tea in the harbor. Which brings us to a lovely little segue and dovetail into the topic that we want to discuss today.
The transitions, Raven. Just what a great little podcaster.
Yeah, I transitioned faster than Sam Levinson from quote-unquote filmmaker to quote-unquote porn kingpin.
I mean, he's a professional creep. By the way, guys, we're not going to be watching The Idol. We encourage that you also don't watch it, but keep up with the YouTube clips and Twitter memes and Reddit analysis, because what a disaster it's going to be. Also, it took the Succession Sunday slot, which is...
Send us your Succession fanfics where the Roys begin watching The Idol. We will read those.
Oh my goodness, gosh, yes. Alright, so speaking of tea in the harbor, I'm gonna quickly intro today's topic, which is... Alright, so today we're going to bring you some goodies from Old Blighty. We're gonna talk about streaming and all the British content from across the Atlantic, and I've been very interested in this, Raven, just because a lot of conversation about this has been happening, and recently Quentin Tarantino, our favorite insufferable dude, Quentin Tarantino, said he will not be casting a British actor in his last movie, which is titled The Movie Critic, because just no with the British actors taking American parts. Just, creating jobs for Americans, Quentin Tarantino over here. And there's obviously a lot of chatter in the fandom about Doctor Who's return later this year, which is going to be, I believe, a co-production with Disney, or it's going to be available on Disney+. And of course, every second, every minute of every day, we're being forced to witness the tragic spectacle that is Maddie Healy and Taylor Swift's relationship, quote unquote. So, what a great excuse to talk about streaming and content, as we said, from across the Atlantic, and really, honestly, take shots at it because they asked for it. They've been asking for it since 1300s, 1400s, 1500s. So, proceed with caution, because there will be unsolicited snark and, frankly, a remarkable amount of jokes at their expense.
Oh, I'm ready. I got my British dentures out. They're basically a bunch of rotted wood that I pulled from the forest floor when I was up cosplaying as a Star Wars rebel in the Redwood Forest. I am ready to let's get it going, governor.
Before we do that, quickly, let's recap social media stuff, and then we'll get into it.
As I said before, we love to hear from you guys, especially if you have trash recommendations for us. We are on both Twitter and Instagram at FullScreenPod. We also upload our episodes to our YouTube channel at Fullscreen Podcast, and you can reach out to us fullyscreened@gmail.com for your long-form Doctor Who Sherlock crossover fanfiction. Please send it to me, 2012 Tumblr, bring it back.
Hell yeah. David Tennant, Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman. Let's go.
British cheekbones, baby. Let's go. Welcome into the multiplying genre, where today we're going to be examining the admittingly dwindling cultural cachet of the British Empire and its impact on streaming. So for those of us who are old enough to remember the halcyon days of people watching the 1994 Pride and Prejudice miniseries starring Colin Firth, to people like me who remember the glory days of Super Hulock on Tumblr, British TV has been slowly creeping more and more into the American cultural zeitgeist. So we're examining two streaming services today that particularly focus on British content and asking the question, is there anything more to entertainment from this cursed island besides a glut of reality TV? Arctic Monkeys Tumblr post from 2013 to 2015 in the AM era, and the general collapse of their society with Brexit and fall of the sterling pound? Let's hope so. We'll start with two streaming services that are pretty prominent in terms of catering to American audiences with British content. So the first one we're looking at is Acorn TV. It is actually an American-owned company. Although Acorn TV itself is headquartered in the UK in London, it is owned by RLJ Entertainment, formerly Image Entertainment, which is an American film production company and once a distributor of home video, so DVD and VHS, if y'all remember that. So it's part of the AMC networks, along with IFC Films, Sundance TV, and BBC America, and the Shudder streaming service, which we've also covered. So Acorn used to originally sell VHS tapes. They moved into digital streaming and launched Acorn TV in 2013 as a standalone service. And you can subscribe to it with either a monthly or annual subscription option. If you live in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and Ireland, you can also see content from your own countries on Acorn TV. So they also include a little bit of content from some other Commonwealth countries, but it is primarily focused on content from the United Kingdom. You can download Acorn TV on a variety of your living room devices, Amazon Fire TV, Apple and Android TV, Chromecast, and Roku. Or you can download the digital apps on your iOS and Android devices. So how is Acorn TV kind of doing? Well, from a price point, I'd say it's kind of reasonably priced. It's like $6.99 a month. You have a free trial that you can do for 7 days, or you can get a bundle offer at $69.99 for a year, which basically means you're getting 12 months for the price of 10.
$6.99 is also the current cost of Apple TV Plus, just to point that out. It's
All
one
right,
of the lowest, if not the lowest, yeah.
Especially if this is the kind of content that you consume, it might be a really good deal for you. And I think they're doing pretty well. Their estimated revenue annually is somewhere between 15 and 25 million. And they hit 1 million subscribers, a pretty important milestone, in 2019. And they're currently hovering at around between 1.2 and 1.3 monthly million users a month on their website. So I would say that it's an interesting time for them. I think their numbers are going to be going up.
That's good. That's from this many viewers. The revenue is good.
Yeah, and it's part of that AMC umbrella as well. So they do have a little bit of financial cushion in terms of having a Daddy Warbucks as AMC, who are kind of, I would say, collectively pushing streaming numbers and viewership numbers and not trying to focus on the individual services itself. So they're kind of letting everyone have at their resources without getting petty about who's bringing how much to the table.
Exactly. Remember when we did our Shudder and Screambox episode, they actually, I think that was, we talked about maybe at that time how they've stopped reporting numbers for individual streaming services, and it's become very much like we are one umbrella with shared resources and we support all our services equally.
Yeah, and if that's how they're financially moving forward, I think that makes total sense. Most of their audience seems to be within the US, around like 70% of the audience, but they do offer services in Canada and Argentina, which is like kind of the next two most populous countries in terms of how many users they have. And
because of the Falkland Islands, in Argentina. That touched a nerve.
Colonialism is going to come up a lot in this episode, guys. It's not a shocker, but yeah, basically, if we really want to do a deep dive on those numbers, absolutely, it's because of the Falkland Islands. Shout out to everybody who was alive during the 80s and remembers the fiasco of Queen Elizabeth's decisions back then. Anyway, the average viewer of Acorn TV is a female. Age distribution 26 to 34 seems to be the primary audience as well. But here's an interesting one. The next most prominent audience is between the ages of 55 to 64. So, I would say that it is not unfair to categorize Acorn TV and subsequently maybe British streaming services as something that caters to the boomer aunt who loves Jane Austen. You know, that stereotype has prevailed for sure, but that really seems to be where they're going for, because looking at the content of Acorn TV, they have some original content, and it really seems like very Hallmark-ish, simple, easy to digest stuff. They've got Jane Seymour, Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, starring in her own series as Harry Wilde. Recipes for Love and Murder is the name of another one. So, I mean, it's not going to take a rocket scientist to figure out what kind of content they have on there. Also, as I mentioned before, they're owned by RLJ Entertainment, which has a 64% stake in the licensing arm of Agatha Christie's estate. So they have Agatha Christie's Poirot series available on their streaming service. They even premiered the final season of Poirot in 2014 on there, which is kind of a big deal from a streaming perspective. The final episode garnered Emmy nominations, so it was the first time that a streaming service was represented prominently at an award show for television. So it's often overlooked in that narrative, but they have some of the classic sort of British television series there. Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries, of course, is not British strictly, but it speaks to that colonial pantheon of the Commonwealth. Foyle's War, Midsummer Murders, Happy Valley. And they also are the host of BBC's A Suitable Boy by Mira Nair. So
really?
There's some content there that is made in Britain that isn't available on other streaming services that you can go there, that isn't strictly related to necessarily British work. It's work that's produced by the BBC or other British television channels. They have it from All 3 Media, Channel 4, BBC Studios, ITV, Content Media. These are, of course, the big studios that are present on the other side of the Atlantic. So you can see content from there. So that should be a pretty good wrap up of what we have on Acorn TV. So Acorn TV isn't like a super fancy streaming website, so when I went to do a review, I really wasn't expecting much. I kind of got what I expected, which I think is a net positive overall. It has pretty simple classification of its content, which I think really tells me that they know their target audience, especially given that they seem to have quite a sizable representation in like senior citizens using this application. They have feel-good favorites, they have originals, of course, but they have period dramas, miniseries, full movies, documentaries, foreign language. So they have it pretty easy for people to try and figure out without going into the specifics of when you're having a bad day and want to feel whimsical. That kind of a tag is going to confuse like a 60-year-old person. So I can imagine my mom seeing like, what is Manic Pixie Dream Girl? What is this? And I think that they've avoided that, which is good. They really know their audience.
Leave that for the Gen Zs on Netflix, you know?
Right, yeah. I can see that totally shifting in the next 20 years. We're going to have insanely specific tags for content. And I think coming from tech, I always respect when even the simplest application is allowing yourself to have basic features like simultaneous caps, multiple devices, and allows you to download the app on multiple living room devices and your phone, of course, but it also allows you simultaneous cast as well for up to 2 devices at a time, which I think is fine. This is a modest application. It's not trying to rise to the top. It's $6.99 a month. I don't think they have the resources to be able to get to like a Netflix level of, for people playing content from the streaming service at a time, which is fine.
You're saying they're not interested in building a Russo brothers powered citadel empire of spies on here that keeps people just browsing.
No, the British are always interested in building an empire. I have no doubt that they have sinister motives later. I would just say it's not very apparent right now because it's also kind of plain, right? It's extremely simple. They're definitely not interested in catering to broke bitches because there are no free options allowed. Like, even if you want to see British ads for teeth whitening or lemon juice or whatever other stereotype of British people we have from 100 years ago, I guess now it would be like self-tanner and lip filler. That's my British stereotype. So there's no free option with ads. And I thought that's a huge opportunity missed out, but maybe they can't afford it. They do cycle in content that they host, like Netflix, where it's like licensed from other people, but they're not doing a super good job of telling you what's available and what's leaving. That kind of UI UX is still being built out and it's a little bit shaky. And the ratings that I saw for the app on the app stores were quite dismal. It seems like they have a lot of bugs that are getting reported but not getting looked at, which I think again speaks to how it's a small operation and they probably don't have engineers looking at this full time or trying to fix it because it may not be a priority for them. If the majority of the users are watching it on living room devices, that's where they may be focusing their efforts on. So without any insight into the business decisions behind the product, this is just my educated guess that they don't really care about the mobile side of things, which, given that they have a large audience between 55 and 64, I can
Makes
see
sense.
that. Yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder how they're organized. Like, I imagine they're AMC teams, and do you think the engineering and product teams are just like handling 3 products? Like, let's say AMC Plus, and then Discovery. Let's say like the journeys are organized as like, I'm doing discovery of content across AMC Plus, Shutter, and Acorn TV.
No, I'm shaking my head to disagree with you because my guess is that they have Android, iOS living room devices, and then they pick up bugs and features for the individual iOS and Android and living room apps. And they're prioritized by the number of viewers.
So they're not looking at journeys, they're looking at device-based.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see it.
Keeping it close, keeping it under budget and on time, lean content machines.
Yeah. Makes sense for them, for a small team, they launched in 2016, you said? Alright, they're finding their legs still.
Yeah, and they're not really looking to grow or explode, so they're chugging along. I think this is just one of the many legs that's propping up the overall AMC empire, like you said, so yeah, we don't have empires within empires. It'll get messy, I guess.
All right, let's get to the other big service coming from the UK, which is called BritBox. So a little bit of background. So it all started with the idea of Project Kangaroo. By the way, this is a theme that will come up. They're very bad at naming things. You'll see shows, services, secret projects, colonized lands. It's a whole thing. And this was an early attempt at SVOD in 2007 by an SVOD being subscription video on demand by ITV, BBC and Channel 4. But the attempt was blocked at that time by Competition Commission, which is the equivalent, I imagine, to FTC's Bureau of Competition. So they wanted to keep these big players separate. However, with the rise of streaming and American services really taking over, 2007, 2008, 2009, that was the time that Netflix was really changing the game. This really changed public perception, as and we've talked about this a lot before. Public perception influences laws and lawmakers, and everything sort of kind of changes. And people and lawmakers then started to change their minds because they wanted to keep British content, British services, British businesses competitive, and especially keep the PSBs, which are public services broadcasters, competitive. BBC being a major PSB. So they launched a service, BritBox, in 2017 in the US. So another theme, Raven, Acorn TV also launched in the US. We love them. We love them over here. And then quickly followed by a Canadian launch. And then British launch actually happened in 2019, 2 years later, which is very interesting. But by this time, they had improved some of their market rollout strategies. They'd learned some tech best practices. So they were doing a lot of beta testing, they started offering free trials and getting the feedback and improving their apps and improving their service experience across different channels, platforms. And by the end of 2019, Channel 4, Channel 5, BBC, and ITV, these are the big four broadcasters in the UK, were all partnered together to provide content in this service, which is a huge deal. Never before had this happened, to exclusively go for content on one service and really collaborate with all of these services together. Internationally, BritBox is split in ownership with ITV and BBC. In the UK, it's 100% owned and operated by ITV. We don't know why.
Yeah, it's kind of what reminds me of the Hulu situation, where it's a majority stake somewhere, and that's how they've got the business split up, because I imagine something about the BBC being a publicly funded thing has something to do with its ownership in the UK. That's just a theory, but laws are like that, I guess.
Yeah. Throughout 2021, they expanded and enabled into different markets. So it seems like 2021 was a dedicated year of look beyond US, Canada, and the UK. So they expanded to other markets. So Australia launch happened in this year. South Africa launch happened in 2021. And a lot of Nordic countries, Sweden, Finland, etc. Total, I believe, it is available in only 9 countries as of today. So this is, I think, Nordic countries, South Africa, Australia, UK, US, and Canada. They also have really started to now pay attention to integrations with Amazon. So that was a thing that became very apparent when I looked into BritBox, that people don't use the app of BritBox as much. People use the integration with Amazon a lot more, which is kind of a theme. If you start an integration with Amazon, and if you're a Prime user, it's just much easier to use. You don't have to download anything separate and extra and wait, and it seems very seamless to navigate to Amazon if you're browsing there already and start watching content there.
People pay for Prime to get things and I'm generalizing here for the above 55 crowd, but you're getting your medication, your multivitamins, and all of that delivered from Amazon anyway. If you're getting a streaming service thrown in it and you just add this along, this seems like a pretty good deal.
Seamless, right? I also saw we had done a UI, I think a few episodes ago, UI platform analysis of Amazon Prime Video, and they had an update where it lets you know which content is free, which content is for rent, which content is included and not included in something that you already have. So all those really matter with all these separate integrations that they're really doing over there on Amazon. What else to call out here on the background? I would say the next markets they're looking at, the international CEO, Rima Sakan. has said they want to expand to India, countries in South America and Middle East, where there's a lot of interest in British content, which, okay. And the North America CEO, Emily Powers, is also very active in these decisions, of course, and love to see streaming CEOs be powerful female. So great thing.
Yeah, I'm happy for Girl Boss, but I have to really come in and say I'm not really sure if kids in India these days are growing up reading Enid Blyton and Agatha Christie anymore. I think that the long arm of colonialism's reach has definitely had cascading effects into our society, but the immediate cultural cachet where we are reading Sherlock Holmes and trying to enunciate words to resemble British pronunciation, those days are gone. I think we're now more in the global sense of trying to integrate ourselves with the world, and since the United States is more cultural capital, I think that the limit of kids watching British stuff is just Peppa Pig. I don't think that there's a huge generation out there that remembers like British content, quote unquote, with fondness. I just don't know if that's still the case.
I think that makes sense because some Bollywood celebrities were very proud of speaking at King Charles' coronation, and they were very much attacked and laughed at by the younger generation on Twitter, Reddit, and what have you. So there's a big divide there. In terms of revenue and viewership for BritBox, this as of Feb 2023, this year, they have 3 million subscribers worldwide. So only 9 countries that they're available in right now. Last year, they had less than 500,000 subscribers. So they've really expanded in their subscription numbers. For context, YouTube TV has around 7 million subscribers, Netflix has 250 million, Disney stands at 160 million. Even Criterion Channel and Movie TV, which is something we'll go into in the future, the curated services, they have around 10 million, or they claim to have around 10 million users. Very interesting. Of course, these services, we should note, are American, or America born, and are available in a lot more markets than just BritBox. In terms of cost, it costs $7.99 a month or $79.99 a year. There is a 7-day free trial. Same with Amazon Prime integration, same cost. There is some free content you can see, to get you into the mood of BritBox, get you a sense of what kind of content is there. There is no ads tier. No interest in ads tier. Same thing with Acorn TV. They're not about that. They're all about give us the money or get out of here. And in terms of revenue, the estimate is around 12 million. But because it's an ITV and BBC situation, those numbers to me seem a little cooked. ITV, for example, as a whole, with all its properties, in 2022, the revenue was 2 billion. Netflix stands somewhere at 31 billion in revenue, if for context. So I just want to point out, self-reporting is a little bit of trash, It's just, as we've seen with The Rock, who knows with streaming.
I don't think that the British Empire collectively could come to the same level of delusion as The Rock, all right? Like, the American, I would say, trademark on delusions of grandeur is something that these British people can only aspire to. Steamed chicken and push-ups at 5 a.m. every day, keep going at it.
Yeah. One day you can also be as delusional as Americans. As us Americans. All right, so audience...
No, just The Rock. Not all Americans. Just The Rock. He holds enough delusion for all of America.
Audience, again, skews older. And this might be a theme for what they're going for, across British content. There is which we'll kind of dissect a little bit later, nostalgia, or I don't know, like some kind of romanticism. Not nostalgia, but some kind of romanticism that is very exclusive to the older generation, I would say. So 45 and up is the age range that of most of the customers of BritBox. Doesn't seem there's an interest in expanding to the 18 to 24-year-olds at this time. Doesn't seem that BritBox wants to do originals like Bridgerton that really pulls in the younger audience, marries the two, together, the romanticism of like period dramas, but like makes it a little bit more accessible to younger audience. I think it's very clear the focus right now is just content expansion for what works and then enablement across markets. So just sort of makes sense for a small team. It's less than 50 people on BritBox currently, so they want to expand existing capabilities, low effort, high impact, before diving into sort of risky newer ventures and seeing what else is out there. Some content highlights. So because of the BBC and ITV of it all, it does have some classics. So Agatha Christie seems to be a theme across Acorn as well. They have a separate collection which you can sort of access, the Agatha Christie collection. Mm-hmm. There's Doctor Who.
Because it was produced by ITV, so that's why they must have it, because ITV produced both Poirot and Miss Marple, so that makes sense.
They have Doctor Who, Mr. Bean, Rome. There's other popular shows which I...
Spectrums of the sexuality scope, huh? They have Doctor Who and Mr. Bean. So yeah. You can get off Correct. Whichever way you want to. That's pretty cool. That's very open-minded, BritBox.
They have other popular shows, which I was having such a great time browsing these titles, these shows. So there's Sister Boniface. I want to read the descriptions of these as well. So Sister Boniface is... the description says, criminals, say your prayers. The Cotswolds crime-solving... Vespa driving nun returns in this lighthearted Father Brown spinoff.
I enjoyed Father Brown, and I can't help but try to correct you when you said Boniface. It's Boniface. It's like one whimsical, jaunty word. And I do appreciate of them being able to laugh at Catholicism, because I don't think that's something that the United States has really come around to. I think they're just so plagued by the stories of the church's abuse that they're not really having fun watching a nun on a Vespa. So that it sounds cute. I enjoyed Father Brown, and I think that it's nice that they gave a lady a spin-off so quickly, considering it took like 80 years to give a lady a chance to play Doctor Who. So congrats to the Catholic show for being more progressive.
She was ushered out pretty fast after that too. Anyway, what else is that? The Thief, His Wife, and the Canoe. Great title. There are others. There's love how they just get to the bottom of what the show is about. So some other titles are Time, Crossfire, Redemption, Suspect, The Victim, The Cleaner, The Syndicate. I just love this.
People love watching murder. They love to be murdered. They love murdering. They love wallowing in the murder of it all. And now if you add the British accent, it makes it feel like this isn't trash. This is elevated storytelling, because it's the same fucking cop procedural drama, but this time they're British, so they can feel less guilty and say, yeah, Law and Order is kind of trash TV, but
Broadchurch.
This is redemption, revelation, I don't know, whatever you said. This is just an excuse for them to say, this is CSI, but, they sound like... What's an older actor that they would have lusted over? Sir Laurence Olivier, maybe. This is like a little Laurence Olivier flavoring put on top of the Law and Order.
Speaking of Sir Lawrence, they do have great... One thing about British content is like a small island, but has such capable, such talented, such recognizable actors. So a lot of these like small shows, or to us they seem small, but they star really big names. Matthew McFadden, Martin Freeman, Kelly MacDonald, Stephen Merchant, David Tennant, Sean Bean. So yeah, it's not like you get to be too big for these little shows and you just leave to go do, I don't know, the Red Notice or the Gray Man, and you never look back, but which is nice.
I mean, let's be fair, Benedict Cumberbatch is going to be cashing Doctor Strange checks until his heart gives out. But I think the work ethic concept that you mentioned, where people try to give it their all in performances on TV shows, the British television scene is quite robust. They make these like small contained TV shows, like they call them series, and it's just like 6 episodes and you're done, which was the basis of a hilarious joke on the television show Community, which I love talking about Community for whatever reason. But Britta got Abed into a TV show that was only 6 episodes long, and he had a mental breakdown because he's an American consumer. It's like 22 episodes.
Well, now the streaming model is all about the 6 episodes, which is a huge thing we talked about. For more information, check out our WGA episode. So my most favorite things, the categorization of content on here is just bonkers. I love it. There's period dramas, there's categorization of daily from the UK, which are mostly like morning shows and that kind of content, daytime shows. And these are the carousels, so the platform is organized it's very basic. You see the little like preview of content on the top, which takes over most of the screen. Then you see the little carousels with like their titles, and you can scroll within these titles, within these subheaders in the content. And these subheaders are period dramas, daily from the UK, bloody funny. There's also collections, British stand-up, which is great. They're leaning into, again, if you think that this is actually targeted towards Americans and foreigners, it makes sense. British stand-up, British humor.
Yeah, because the British people are really known for their sense of humor. They're the funniest people.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, the dry humor is very specific to Britain, and like the early days of The Office, for example, followed how Michael Scott played Ricky Gervais's character to a T a little bit, and it did not go over well. So that kind of humor is very specific to like where you're just a tinge of just, you know, vitamin D deficiency and a tinge of alcoholism. So it's a bit of all of that.
It's not a dry sense of humor, it's dry food. That's why their main spice on all of their food is just slopping on water. Anyway.
Yum, yum, yum. So it's very, so British stand-up. Make of that what you will. We know what Raven thinks. Escapes, so sort of like travel-oriented content. There's soaps, Shakespeare, Britflix. I do love, my favorite thing I have to say is something called BritBox Destinations. So this is extremely cute and useful. I thought, again, targeted towards sort of the foreigners, or maybe, you know, British people themselves, but you actually click on this and you land on this sort of experience where on the left side you'll see the map of a region of counties and regions of the UK. So you'll see London, Yorkshire, and the Humber, the Midlands, Scotland, and the Northeast. And you'll see in the map the content mapped out, like this is the specific region that the content comes from. And then you can scroll as well with the map to view these content. So you can actually take a tour, sort of learn the little cultural things about this is what the accent is like in this region, and this is what they do when they go to school in this region. I thought that was like a very fun way to engage with the audience, and
that's
probably
cool.
Very unique. Have not seen that anywhere else.
Yeah. I would love to see like an American version of that. Like I would go
I was gonna say, can you imagine? Like, this would be very hard, but do you think something like that exists where there's a map of US content with like The Sopranos, Ozark, Fargo, you know, like all of that just like mapped out? Love to see it.
I think we would see interesting patterns emerge. For example, New Jersey would just be shitty mob crime dramas. And then if you go to the South, it's just depressing drug-related things. California is just vapid losers. New York is vapid losers with better fashion. I just think that things could skew very offensive very quickly.
That'll be interesting. If someone knows something like this exists, or if you want to create this, hit us up. All right, so least favorite features, low lights of BritBox. As I mentioned, the sort of organization seems a little bit random. So the sort of like the splash page, which like displays content, takes up all of the page on the web experience and on my Fire TV, and it's very much like, it seems a little bit thoughtless to me because it pushes the discovery of content very much below the fold. Other than that, very basic. The top level navigation is just home, new, and all, and then you see the sign in, sign out on the top right. There is a conspicuous lack of profiles. You cannot create multiple profiles here. There is, when I was clicking around, there seems to be a black hole of clicks sometimes when you don't, for example, between sign in and coming to the top level nav, there's just like blank pages that you have to navigate away from.
Yeah, there's a lot of dead ends in the user experience flows, and I feel like we approached it with the intention of trying to understand if the navigation is seamless, but it may not have been built that way. Maybe they don't have an audience for their applications that are super curious and get click curious around the website. They're like, I know what I paid for. I'm here to watch my Doctor Who and my Agatha Christie and my Redemption, Invasion, one of those very insipid sounding crime procedural dramas where they're doing the same CSI shit. But now I'm an educated BritBox user, so I know that it's a Liverpool and not a London accent. So there you go.
But this is like such a no red flag to me, and you as a product person, like, do your due diligence, create a better interaction design and better like information architecture of your app, because this is just unacceptable. I was just kind of fuming just navigating around the content. By the way, so there's you see the content discovery that takes over the full page, sort of advertises the content. Then you scroll to the carousels, and there's maybe 4 carousels tops. And then you see a back to top CTA. I'm like, you reach the bottom of a pit within 3 scrolls. You're fine. Like, you don't need this navigation. It was very web, sort of like design, but also unnecessary. You do not need back to top. I can scroll back up. It's fine.
These are the same people that put all those weird medieval guys on the tapestry. So aesthetics and design aren't necessarily their forte. So I'm just going to have to chalk this up to cultural differences. They're getting there. Yeah.
The performance is nothing to write home about. Search is actually not able to search anything. I tried to search for whatever Redemption Invasion. Did not come up in the first 5 seconds. So this is my experience on my Fire TV. So make of that what you will. Video playback is just fine, just meh. No ads, so only paid version, as we mentioned. So it's fine. Like in the early days, I remember watching on my computer, watching Sherlock when the new episodes would come out on BBC, but they weren't available in the traditional format in any streaming service as well. I remember those players were so janky, like very Daily Motion-esque,
Yeah, and you would go to the official site, but you would have a better experience if you, how should I put this, found it from other sources that are associated with free floating on the high seas. And I think Netflix eventually put this up because they're like, these Tumblr bitches are losing their mind. You gotta have this on a proper streaming service where you can rewind and catch all the John Locke moments. And, I don't think they're at that level yet. They're also an insanely small island, so catering to several millions of people may not be an infrastructure that they planned for. So
it does, if they are planning to expand to a younger generation, they need to pay attention to these things, because if you get hooked to a particular show or particular movie that's a BritBox original and you run into these issues, it is actually, what it's doing is pushing you out of using the experience. So you're going to seek out other sources that are, we won't name those sources, but you know, you're like, I'm just going to view this somewhere else that's not paid and have a better experience and still catch up with my character. So tragic experience overall, with one highlight, which is the regional content organization, which we love. So.
Yeah, I think that was the big differentiator, because what you just talked about was very similar to my experience on Acorn TV. Nothing to write home about. It seems to be very functional, and it's very much catered to, hey, we know who you are and you know why you signed up for us to come see those shows. It's got very clear branding in that sense, where it's like, you're signing up to our service because of this show, and this show. Come watch this, you know. You like to see our reality show where we renovate all these old manors around rural England, you know, places where they shot Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility at. We know you signed up for this. This is your fix. Come see it. No frills. No other games. So, kind of clean.
Welcome into Cross-Dysfunctional. This is where today we'll be talking about just how dysfunctional we are to be obsessed with British content. We're going to look beyond Acorn TV and BritBox and really dive into the factors that are leading to the success of British TV at the moment. So I will say number one factor is just plain and simple Anglophilia, which I also like to call trauma in my bones. But it's true. The fact that for us in America, at least, it's very similar but different. The language is the same. There are many similarities in the pace of life and existing. However, cute little differences. There's the accent, for example, the food, or like look at their snacks, you know, look at the Lad Bible videos of their snacks and compare those to American snacks. Look at what they eat in their diners. That's so funny. We, you know, look at what they call ham and bacon and all of that stuff. And their pop culture obviously has been a thing of fascination for a while. The music, the Vanity Fair interviews that they do where Sophie Turner teaches you British slang or something like that. So it's very similar but different, and these differences are actually differences that I think draw the audience in instead of alienating them. Raven, what do you think about that?
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that the differences in the culture are exoticized, like a lot of differences between cultures are, but I think they're also placed with a certain reverence that other cultures do not get. I don't see an examination of content from, let's say, Latin America or any parts of Africa that produced so much entertainment because they produce them in different languages. And I think there's also a component of translation, but I think the acceptance of the fact that there is a difference and we just have to get over it and things don't have to be the way that we make them over here, quote unquote, is a lot more respected. I feel like a lot more leeway is given to British content because it is given a specific reverence that other places are not. There's a certain amount of escapism as well. I think Bridgerton saw to that and capitalized on that, so it's not like it's not gone noticed, but the example that I was thinking of was like, people exoticize Japanese culture a lot. You know, there's a lot of weeaboos that consume anime and manga, but no real content with Japanese actors and actresses. And they love our culture, but not the people. So they'll celebrate chai and yoga and turmeric, but not actual
Turmeric.
Indian faces and bodies. I will fucking on sight if you say turmeric. It's turmeric. Haldi if you're actually respectful. It speaks to that concept again where they want British faces with British stories, but it's not the same level of respect given to other cultures. So Anglophilia is just another way of framing that as well, because a certain generation definitely associated the act of being British with being intellectually and culturally superior. And that has significantly diminished among generations. I think people who are especially within squarely the Gen Z bracket of consumers do not consider the British to be elevated or high class. I mean, they're the place of Love Island. And
but Anglophilia, it makes it so that it's so hard to just push that to the side and you just don't pay attention to those.
I think we're breaking through it. I mean, the failure of Cats 2019 has been very comforting to me. That with the combined, I would say, the general anger towards James Corden, the fact that I haven't seen Benedict Cumberbatch in something with a British accent in the last 5 years. I think that...
Okay, sorry, it's obligatory that we say Dormammu here. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, you're getting to something very important there, and I think if these services, if this content really wants to capitalize on the existing Anglophilia and not lose it with the younger generations, make more content that's accessible to people of color, to the LGBTQ plus community. Like, let's see more Bridgerton type content that is pulling from the best of the Mr. Darcy type content, but also making it more modern. And I don't know if you saw, so looking through BritBox originals, I didn't see this. I just saw a lot of just, I don't want to call it
there
basic,
was nothing stellar in there, and you can absolutely call it basic because it was literally following a formula. There were sitcoms that had all the same tropes. It is literally King of Queens, but with a fat British guy instead, and an excessively tanned hot wife instead of a hot Italian wife, because of course being Italian is illegal in the United Kingdom. And it's just like, they didn't do it for anybody else. It was just for them. They're not trying to cater it in any way, and I think that may shift over the next couple of years because they're realizing, more and more people are seeing our content and they're trying to make it accessible and in some way less British.
Exactly. This gets to something. So the second point I had here is the way they're organized, the British entertainment industry. It's very much looking within, you know? Mm-hmm. Looking at the existing tropes, as you mentioned, just like what works, we're just going to follow the same formula and just market it to people that it's already working with. No one's saying no, let's keep doing it. And the way it's so different, the more I read about how British entertainment industry functions and is organized, it's so different from Hollywood. For example, there is no one place that's the filming place in the UK. There's a lot of shows are filmed in London, but it's not the entertainment center of the UK. Like, you could go to the northeast of England, you could go to the south, the east, and whatever, and it's very much very accepted, and there's a lot of studios and a lot of filming locations. It's very dispersed.
Doctor Who during the Tennant years very famously filmed in Wales because they used to use abandoned quarries and mines to resemble other planets, which is like, cheap, great location scouting. We can't all go to Tunisia like George Lucas, so we make do with what we have. But we can tie it back to the office, to the British office, of where they have the ability to add in this narrative flair of, they have these talking head segments where they look into the camera and speak, so it adds like a little bit more character. I haven't seen anything groundbreaking like that come from that, other than like reinventing the concept of putting random people in a house together and recording it when shenanigans ensue. They want to marry each other and then are living in a house. They want to fuck without marrying and are living with each other. They're plotting a coup for taking down the government of a small country in Central America and are living in a house together.
I think Ted Lasso poked fun at it. Well, speaking of Ted Lasso, another example of an American show that's very much based in Anglophilia. And every episode is, I would say, kind of tackles one thing about the British culture from the lens of Americans, which is fun. But I think the British entertainment industry, just how it's organized and how it's not centered in one place, really gives, first of all, like, makes it accessible to people who want to work as an actor but don't necessarily, they're not the superstar. So if you shoot in Wales, you get an opportunity to be an extra and like get more TV shows and still live with, you know, your roommates or whatever. You don't have to move to LA or sell your soul to like afford to live in this town. So it makes it more accessible. I also think it's just how, now again, I think we need to look into this, but this also really deeply ties into if you're in a monolith of an industry, there will be systems that take advantage of you. So now we're gonna reference, you know, for example, right now we're seeing WGA's fight, SAG-AFTRA's fight, and DAG's fight, directors, actors, and writers against the AMPTP, the producers. These are, to me, seem, again, we offer the American perspective here, so please correct us if we're wrong. This is a very American thing of a monolith happens and then someone just happens to take advantage of it, and then you have to fight for your rights.
Well, monopolies are not an American invention. Let me stop you right there. As much as I would love to dump on the system, like, no.
But maybe the American, everyone, they're talking about the WGA all the time.
Someone else made it and we perfected it. That is the American way. Labor exploitation, we didn't invent it, we perfected it. And I think that with the variety of acting roles that you can get in Britain, because they do have a very strong theater culture of seeing plays and live performances and people actually training to do work that is never seen outside of the audience that is literally in the room with them, there's other opportunities. And it's not as I would say profit focused because of a little bit more workplace equity situation that's given because you are in Europe or even in the UK.
Those words don't make sense. What is that?
Believe it or not, as much of a shamble as they seem right now, they do have a lot of labor protections in place in the United Kingdom, and so it's like nobody is scrambling that hard to make a dime so the boss makes $1. And I think that obviously affects the way that you're putting things out there. Like you said, the industry isn't so ride or die in terms of making a profit, because I don't think they were incredibly profitable to begin with. And the second thing is that the cultural cachet of the UK, as I said, like once upon a time, they had James Bond, which is like not doing great in terms of like film numbers. Daniel Craig has switched his nationality for his next money-making machine. So
he's a Brooklyn boy now. Yeah.
Well, I was actually referencing Benoit Blanc. How very dare you, ma'am. But
franchise machine, yeah.
Exactly. He's done with Bond, and I think that most British people are working on American television shows now.
Yes, exactly. Well, not if Quentin Tarantino has something to say about it.
Yeah, I think him and Spike Lee were incredibly vocal about, like, especially Spike Lee said that even black actors from the UK could not realistically portray the black American experience, which I feel is not without its validation point. But I think that, you know, in some ways I feel like the reverse of where an Indian American actor cannot portray a British Indian person, because God bless, nobody knows how to do a British accent in this continent, but also it is an extremely different experience for an Indian to be growing up Indian in the UK versus India.
I think I differ in thoughts there. I just think I part of acting is that you can empathize and display it to people, and I think it's a sensitive issue. Of course, are you taking away roles from a subsection of people that already struggle to get roles? Do you know what I mean? Or is this a sort of like is this the time where we kind of expand to, it's just a larger issue, but for specifically the Indian Americans and Indian British example, I think Indian Americans should be able to play Indian Brits. That's where I stand for that one. But
yeah, because you're an Indian American, and I support your bias. And I'm not.
If Dev Patel comes and plays an Indian American, do you think I'm just gonna be like, oh no, like that's fine with me. It's all good.
So you're saying you'll hold to your principles unless someone hot comes along. So your actual principle is whoever is hottest will get the role. And I support horny rights. I'm a big ally of the horny community.
I just want Dave to be the next Bond. Can we please do that? Can we go there? Please, Broccoli's, please let us
I think he deserves better than Bond. That's what I'm saying, is that, like, that's, I feel like, again, we're just talking about the British media content is so kind of staid and formulaic. And for you and me, that can feel repetitive or boring, but for others, it can be very comforting.
Yeah. They are, for now, they have stayed away from like franchising everything and making everything an IP. I mean, with the Doctor Who returning this year, and bringing back the hits, we'll see how that goes. Maybe if they lean into being more American. But I think, these are some of the things that we were thinking are really leading to this rise of the success of British streaming and British content recently. And let us know your thoughts if we've mischaracterized some stuff or missed some stuff. Absolutely open to hearing. Final thoughts and wrap up. So today we discussed Raven, a summary of British content, British telly, and looked into two of the biggest streamers in the UK. Well, UK focused, as we found out they're actually America based, and UI and platform and content, so Acorn TV, BritBox. I think, again, like we've mentioned, both of us mentioned this in our analysis of Acorn and BritBox, absolutely no bells and whistles. Super simple. Keeps you focused on the content, keeps you focused on the formulaic content, I should say. You know what you're there for. You're there for, I don't know, now I'm thinking redemption and insanity.
I apologize for that. Inhalation.
Oh my god. If these are not shows, free ideas, take them. We'll also take Venmo. So, and also I think that the fact that there is, I don't know how else to put this, but of course most streaming services are going to be very America focused, coming out of America. So maybe there is a lack of, British content that the British public craves, and so the lack of homegrown services really makes them appreciate these two services a lot more and kind of crave more homegrown British services. Why do you think, Raven, the streamers are having a moment from Britain?
Before I get into what I think is currently happening, let's just say I'm going to make a quick prediction right now. It's going to get bigger. It's definitely going to get bigger because of what happened in 2008. It's going to happen again in 2023.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I don't
why
think
is that exactly?
The motherfucking writers' strike. They pay your goddamn writers, but I think it's not fair for me to characterize this as like having a moment now. I think people being drawn or people gravitating towards British content has been around for a long time. It was just like a niche thing now, and the internet has just made that a little bit more accessible.
I've been reflecting on that, and I think you actually that may be as simple. Honestly, it is probably as simple as that, because I've just analyzed that in maybe within the last year, maybe within the last 2 years, towards the tail end of the pandemic, I've just seen ads on the subway for BritBox, Acorn TV. I'm seeing ads on Amazon Fire TV. I'm seeing content being advertised from BritBox and Acorn TV. It might just be as simple as they got more money, they got more product people, they got more tech people to just be like, hey, you know what we should do? Just do an integration with Amazon. They'll handle the rest.
Yeah.
And you know what we should do? Put some money into product marketing. And it just breaks into because before I didn't, the people that I surround myself with, which are very focused, like you, Raven, very focused into looking into the industry and tech and streaming, they didn't know anything about BritBox and Acorn TV before. And now it's a household name with them, even though it's like a low tier streamer. It's definitely not in the top 8, but it's broken through the bubble. And it might just be that it's always been there. They just started advertising. It's always had this ground. So
Agreed.
Streamers, yeah.
The infrastructure from Amazon for integration, for example, wasn't there a few years ago. So you could be like, oh, okay, got it. Like that was like not there. They didn't have something to work with. They do now. And I think another thing that has changed culturally is that Americans are not viewed as being try hard or trying to be super unique by saying, I view things from other countries. One, America is a country of immigrants, so a lot of people try to consume media from the country that they immigrated from. And you share that with your friends, you share that with people from other cultures to explain yourself, and you in return consume other people's culture. So
agree, we insult streamers in a lot of our episodes, but the accessibility and the worlds and stories and connection points streaming has opened is just something that will just, I think, I honestly like want to do like a in-depth analysis of like before, what a normal teenager had access to before and how their world has improved and like changed since like having access to Netflix and Disney from their parents' accounts. I think I want to go back to one of the things that you brought up, the WGA strike. I think
because for a lot of people who grew up outside of the United States or adjacent to British culture like I did, I grew up in the Middle East, and the first Doctor Who that I experienced was Christopher Eccleston, because I was into sci-fi as a preteen and that was who was playing Doctor Who. For a lot of Americans, however, it's David Tennant who took over after Christopher Eccleston left.
10, baby, 10. Yes.
Number 10 was filming and in production and had a couple of seasons out, and then the 2008 strike hit. A complete dearth of content from the United States, and people were on the internet looking up episodes of Doctor Who from a variety of sources, and they glommed onto it. And then they discovered the back catalog, very similar to the scene in Community, where Britta introduces Inspector Spacetime to Abed. It was actually the same experience where people were like, well, I really liked that. And I told people, hey, there's been like 9 other Doctors before him, and they're like, what? And they watched the older seasons, and it's corny, but it's something to do. It's new content, it's fun, and I predict another resurgence from that, because Doctor Who then paved the way for Sherlock. And as we all know, Benedict Cumberbatch was like stepping on Tumblr's collective throat at that point. And there was some transference of that to Tom Hiddleston in his like prime Loki era during the Avengers. And that kind of faded away again because the American media system began churning out so much stuff. So, it kind of got
Reality
pushed
shows.
back. Yeah, it kind of got pushed back to the collective mindset of the average consumer. But now that we're again facing that dearth of content, we're going to be looking outside again. It's like the cycle that keeps repeating.
We'll see a lot of reality shows, which is true, but now we have we're a lot more warm to seeing content from other countries as compared to 2008. So I expect a lot of British content. I expect a lot of K-dramas, J-dramas, and there will be a lot of foreign content during this time. And we say WGA strike, but we've kind of hinted at it. SAG-AFTRA is having, the Screen Actors Guild is also having their negotiations this summer, so are the directors. There is a perfect storm possibility where all three of these strike and Hollywood completely stops. And this would be interesting to see at complete stoppage in America what happens with content with these streamers. I also think, is there a potentiality that BritBox is like 100% partnership with Netflix, and all of BritBox's content goes to Netflix instead of BritBox sort of having the operational capability to market on
Netflix has got bags of money. They will step in on BritBox and Acorn TV space. They will say, let's do even more Bridgertons. Let's do even more stuff that's focused.
But if no one is working currently,
producing outside the United States, they can. They'll find that loophole. They'll go to the UK and say, look at all the big bags of dollars that we have. And we can make this TV show in the UK. We'll just build some friggin' laboratory there. And we're just going to have British actors and British writers. And if the UK doesn't have laws against ChatGPT, why not?
I would be very interested in seeing what they do, Acorn TV and BritBox, because the execs, especially the America-focused businesses that these are, like how they're keeping an eye on WGA and how they can sadly profit off of this sad time.
They recognize this is a moment. Like, Doctor Who used to be a tiny little thing in the UK, and David Tennant started playing the Doctor in 2005. Nobody had heard of him. 2009, they were in Hall H at Comic-Con.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised to hear that Disney Plus will have the Doctor Who specials available. So, there's all kinds of backroom deals happening.
Ain't nobody making Andor.
Yep.
So
shouts to Tony Gilroy. Love you.
They need something.
Quickly also mention like a couple other streamers over from the UK. So there's obviously the BBC streaming service. I think people are gravitating away from that just because Acorn and especially BritBox partners with this BBC content. So a lot of people.
But if you do want to time travel back to what the internet was like in 2006, absolutely check out the BBC iPlayer.
It's honestly, that's honestly facts. And then there's PBS Masterpiece, which is not a British streaming service, but they do have the British content on their Masterpiece. And it's focused on a lot of originals that PBS has produced that employs a lot of British creators and actors. To Tom Jones, Miss Scarlett, Grant Chester is the most British name ever. And again, dedicated Amazon integration for PBS Masterpiece. And then the hallowed BFI play, the British Film Institute play, they also have their streaming service, which I tried to access. They were like, nah, bitch, you're not in the UK. I'm not going to give you access here. So cool. It's location based. And players see, honestly, the website experience, because I tried the web experience, was very pleasant. I love how much I'm a sucker for the incongruity of the UI, where the tiles of content are different colors, different sizes to really draw your eye to a specific item. And had labeled like Amazon what is free, what is rentable, and what is only available with their subscription. So BFI Play, BBC streaming service, and PBS Masterpiece are something that we also wanted to mention. But I think that's where we'll stop for today. And if you have any thoughts about British content, British streaming services, hit us up, write to us, send a pigeon, all that good stuff. Next time, we're going to do another industry tech roundup. We're going to do Yahoo Screen, review of a defunct streaming service. So get excited for that.
Excited about that. Excited to always review things that have crashed and burned to the ground. We did the British Empire,
retro,
and now we're doing Yahoo Screen.
Perfect. Right, that's all for today, folks. Until next time, full screeners. Bye.
Happy Pride Month, y'all. Bye.